Tell us about your dad.
Cut it off.
Tell us about Grandpa.
Was Grandpa born in slavery?
Cut it off till I get
Until you get it together.
And I can say, speaking of Dad's family, see, they were enslaved, but in a way they had more freedom than the ordinary people had.
Well, this was Leroy Gaines, your dad, right? This was Leroy Gaines, your dad.
My grandfather, Dave Gaines, my dad's father, was named Davy and Gus, brother. Two brothers, one named Dave and the other one named Gus Gaines. And they were mostly overseers. The owner lived in town in Washington. And they had a big plantation about 12 miles from Washington, 12, 15 miles. And they had put an overseer, white overseer, over that plantation. People owned that plantation. And since Grandpa and Gus was obedient and great men, they were recognized, in other words, with the owner over and above the overseer. But the overseer, he had the authority to see that the weight went on. And grandfather's mother, she got a certain age, in a way, I don't know, but anyhow, she wasn't too old to wait. But she said her two sons, Uncle Gus and Grandpa Dave, was working, and she wasn't going to wait for white folks for nothing. She had a little house sitting up on the side of the road, a little distance from Grandpa's house. And she went home and sat down. So the overseer went up there to try and make her get out of the house and go away. And she is a good, strong woman. She could catch him back of the neck with one hand and then the seat of his pants and threw him clean outdoors. He could whoop her. And she wouldn't go to work. At first he cut off her ration. And those times they give them only a peck of meal and 3 pounds of meat for a week. And they cut off Granny's ration. The overseer stopped giving her. And Dad said, he's a little fella. And Granny come to, one week, come to Grandpa's house. So Grandpa had his food upstairs, had to go upstairs to get it, and Granny come there and you'd go up and cut off piece of Grandpa's meat one week and get some of his meat. And the next week she'd go to Gus' house and get some of his meat and meal. And Dad said, he little fella, he wasn't getting enough to eat. And Granny started upstairs, so he called her back upstairs. And she had a walking cane, so she hit him across the arm with the walking cane. So he fell out of the floor. And said, oh, Granny, that broke down. And so Grandpa and Gus there got together and told that overseer that he had to give their mother her groceries every week, just like he gave them and other people. But they was not going to see their mother go hungry. and he wasn't giving them enough to divide with the mother. And so he then started giving her ration. And well, she didn't bother about working anymore. And that he was 10 years old when freedom was declared, but he never, nobody bothered about whipping him or nothing like that, or making. He did that. He had to look after the calves in the cow pen, where the people milked the cows when before slavery was quite over. This he got one whipping. He was big enough to chop cotton, and Gus was the overseer over the whole hand. And he kept digging up too much cotton. And Gus whipped him with a switch, used a switch, and whipped him. Grandma told him when he got ready to whipping him, Gus, don't kill my child. She called his attention to don't hurt him. And that's the only whipping he got in slavery time, any kind of a punishment. And then freedom was declared, and the first year his grandpa and Jerry worked for wages for a white man, and him and grandma and other sisters had a cotton patch. And he told us, said he was a strong boy, and he pulled the plow. He pulled the plow, and my plow in to plow the cotton. And they made a bale of cotton that year, and Grandpa sold that bale of cotton and bought his first mule. When they had a mule to plow the next year. And when I got big enough to know anything, Grandpa was renting a 500-acre plantation and had bought a plantation, 214 acres, that let Jim stay on while Jim was staying up there. And he had wage hands and a buggy horse that he rode around to see over the wage hand. And it was inside of 20 years after he come out of slavery, before he got, I remember seeing him just once or twice. Saw him ride the white horse. And he had a carriage. Dad said when he got married to Mom, he used that carriage, dollar, I forget now what name they called it, a Sarah. Yeah, Sarah, like that, and brought Mom home and had a big empire. They had a week wedding at the bride's house, and man, the broom had a big empire the next day. Killed a goat, a shoat, and barbecued, and called the neighbors and friends together, and had a big send-off. And they got married. And so, I guess that's about the overseer and Gus had some words, and the overseer had nerve enough to hit Gus in the mouth with his fist, and Gus caught his thumb in his mouth and almost bit it off. Just that overseer got his thumb out of Gus' mouth. He's standing there shaking his hand, and Gus run on off him and Grandpa. went to the woods then to get away from that overseer. And stayed had to walk to Washington and stayed in the woods that night, but early the next morning they had got to Washington by daybreak and told their owner, Bill Pope was the owner, told him what happened between them and the overseer, and said he took them in his buggy and brought them back out there and heard from the overseer and told the overseer, in order to appease the overseer, that he could give Gus a little thrashing for biting the stuff. And so the overseer, there was an oak tree there that had limbs on it, started to look at the oak tree to get something, and the overseer, the owner told him, don't look up there. You know, you won't get nothing but that and whip him with. And so he got a little switch on Gus, they didn't whip him much as he would have whipped his baby. He's scared.
Kind of scared.
He's already scared of little Gus, and he's scared of the owner to hurt him. He was going to do nothing to hurt him. As the owner, they were valuable men to the owner, and they did their work without any trouble at all, and they were recognized by the owner. And one thing I never did think to ask that, but I never did altogether understand, was all the rest of colored people down through that belonged to white people usually took the name of the white owners. But Grandpa and Gus, they belonged to the folks, but they kept their family name, Gaines's. They never did adopt the name of their owner. And so all these Gaineses we hear of in Virginia, I guess, are relatives to them. They always sold people from Virginia down in Georgia. So my grandmother, on mom's side, her mother, her name Charlotte, she was sold on the Atchison block in Richmond, Virginia, to a man named Ben Harden. Said he paid $1,500. That was the top price for young women. He paid for Grandma and took Charlotte and took her down in Georgia and finally made her his second wife. Spent more time with her than he did with his white wife, and raised a big family by her. And that's why we got colored up. And so that was the way that was. White descendants of Ben Harden was, well, Matthew used him as his lawyer Harden. So he shook hands with me, and long as I guess no whites around, he act like he won't recognize our kinship with him. He knew Brother Matthew left property and everything, and he was aiming to get his hand on as much of that as he could get. And Brother Fred, when I went back, I hadn't had that kind of nothing to do with business like that about getting a will probated. And since Brother Matthew used him, I decided that I would use him. And they didn't come out, nobody, and tell me what a dirty cook he was. But I come home and then went back down there to have the will probated and called him and told him what time I would be at Crawfordville. And so there, and I went down, stopped in Atlanta that the night with Brother Fred, and Eva drove me down to Crawfordville, and Brother Fred went with me. And Eva, and we got there, when we got there, he had beat us over there and took the Aretha and went to the courthouse and had the will probated before I got there. Then he took us, Brother Fred and I, in the car and drove around a block or so and talked to us about the affair. When he left, Brother Fred said to me that I hope he didn't be as dead as his old granddaddy was. His old granddaddy took everything away from his colored family and left it with the whites and left nothing for his colored family. And that is their mom's family. And afterwards, I got rid of him. I found out in dealing with him, trying to get things done, timber sold and all, that he was a crook. I discovered for myself, in a way, that he was a crook, but I didn't know the whole detail. But even in talking to the president of the bank there in Crawfordville about the probating of the will, and he said to me that Hardin, maybe he'd make himself the administrator. I told him I didn't think so. I didn't think he would do nothing like that. But this man knew his record and all, and I didn't know. And Dorita, she said that white people she worked with, was telling us to get rid of the lawyer. But they didn't give no reason at that time until during a year's time, she did finally get rid of him. Once we went over to the bank there, this is a business, and was intended, he said he was going to arrange, we didn't have enough money for the funeral. He was going to arrange with the bank to let us have the money to pay the undertaker off. And we could pay the bank back when they sold timber. And he had got some of the papers was fixed up. And Hardin had them and took us to the bank and talked to the man one day. But he told the bank, I did have my suitcase packed and in the car. I was going to leave that afternoon, but I hadn't told him, but he discovered and told the bank he wanted to get the money and get the thing off because I was going to be leaving that afternoon. But anyway, the deal didn't go through, and Dorita told me that the papers that belonged to her that he had given to the man in the bank, shipped them around to the man, the bank man slipped them to her and let us know that the deal wouldn't go through, he wasn't loaning the money. And so we left out and Went on back home, and I caught the train that afternoon and left and come on. And then afterwards, Aretha, later on, things went around and around. Finally, she got rid of him, had to pay him $250 for what he had done. And what he done, he asked me to give the names of all of Brother Matthew's relatives, names and addresses. And I got written out all the names of brothers who had died and their children, like Brother Johnson's 2 daughters, and Drella's daughter, Cordelia and Lena. I gave him their name and addresses.
You have that written, don't you?
And the lawyer was supposed to send them letters and copies of the will, see. I gave him 20 names. And the legal price was $5 for each one. He was to send all of them a copy of the will to let them know just how Brother Matthew left everything and whose hand and all. And that rascal didn't send notice to anybody, but he charged us. 20 would have been $100. $5 for each charged us just the same, and didn't send. I gave him the notice, the names and the addresses and all, and he didn't send the notice to anybody, but he charged us and put on extra charges.
He wanted to know if anybody was close enough, I guess, to give him some
$250.
Yeah.
And when Dorita got rid of him and got a lawyer in Thompson, Georgia, to take the case. To the lawyer in Crawfordville, I asked her when I got there, there wasn't a lawyer in Crawfordville. Oh, that little old lawyer, she didn't recognize him. And I found out after I told him he was called to preach. In other words, he was a Christian. And he got what they call a little book.
This is Grandpa Leroy.
And Sunday morning, he'd have us all around the fireplace. His family prayers. He would ask us questions. He learned. Now, he never went to school a day in his life. But he said, Mom learned him his alphabet after they got married.
Oh.
And he learned how to put them together and got him a Bible and learned how to read by reading the Bible. And got that little catechism with questions in it. And Sunday morning and taught us the questions. And so questions like that he would ask us around the fireside. And then they had prayer meeting. And I remember, I guess it was Sunday night, and one night, whether it was Sunday night or one night in the week, had prayer meetings from house to house. And the neighbors was having a prayer meeting. I was, I guess, about 7 years old. And what we call local preachers would preach sometime in the prayer meeting. Had no particular education, but a small man, they called them shareback preachers. They sat down behind the chair. Use the chair for that pulpit stand.
That's good.
And preach. And a man, the place.
Thank you.
This tape was made on Father's Day, June the 15th, 1980, by Sylvester Gaines Sr. at the home of his daughter, Mary Parker. Also at the gathering was Fred Gaines and Lillian, Matilda Brooks, and her friend Ella, and Bernard. The tape was made by Sylvester Gaines, who is 91 years old as of March the 11th. He drove his own car here to the family gathering and dinner. We were all so happy to have Dad with us and to hear things from his childhood days.